The Xyler ascendancy did not believe in shields. To them, a shield was an admission of failure. It implied you expected to be hit. The Xyler believed in perfection. They believed in the Argus array. This was the ultimate evolution of point defense technology. Every Xyler warship was studded with thousands of independent AI-controlled microlasers. These weren't heavy weapons designed to punch through armor. They were surgical tools designed to intercept. The Argus AI could track 10,000 incoming vectors simultaneously, missiles, kinetic slugs, even debris, and allocate a precise, millisecond burst of laser energy to vaporize each one before it got within 10 kilometers of the hull. For 50 years, the Argus array had made the Xyler fleet untouchable. They viewed warfare not as a brawl, but as a complex equation where they always balanced the books to zero. They watched as primitive species fired colossal nuclear barrages at them, only for the warheads to be delicately snuffed out, one by one, in silent flashes of light far out in the void. Then, the Human Systems Alliance arrived in the contested sector of Ethelgard Prime. The initial human assault was a disaster of conventional thinking. The human fleet, led by the flagship UNS Prometheus, launched their best, hypervelocity railguns, swarm missiles with advanced ECM suites and heavy fusion torpedoes. High Archon Valerius of the Xyler watched the human effort from his pristine circular bridge. The air smelled of ozone and spun glass. He watched his tactical display as the Argus array went to work. It was a beautiful, silent ballet. Blue needles of light flickered across the void, intercepting the human ordnance with chilling efficiency. "Look at them," Valerius said, his voice a synthesized monotone of disdain. "They throw hammers and firecrackers. They rely on brute force and expensive guidance systems. They do not understand that in the face of perfection, their smart weapons are merely expensive targets. The Argus sees all. The Argus stops all." The human missiles died in droves. Not a single warhead touched a Xyler hull. The human fleet was being picked apart at long range by Xyler beam lances, unable to land a single blow. On the bridge of the battered human heavy cruiser UNS Rust Bucket, Admiral Rusty Caldwell chewed on the end of an unlit cigar. The bridge wasn't pristine. It smelled of burnt coffee, sweat, and overheating conduits. Caldwell watched the tactical plot, seeing his best missiles turn into harmless radioactive dust. "They're too damn fast, Admiral," his tactical officer reported, frustration bleeding into her voice. "That AI is intercepting everything. We tried overwhelming them with volume, we tried electronic jamming. The Argus array just adapts. We can't get a guided weapon through." Caldwell stared at the screen. He watched the precise, almost arrogant way the Xyler lasers snapped from target to target. "They like precision, don't they?" he muttered. "They like things they can track. Things with engines. Things with heat signatures. Things that try to be smart." He spat a piece of tobacco onto the deck plating. "Get me Chief O'Connell in the armory. Tell him to unload the Mark 8 torpedoes. We're switching to the Gospel loadout." "The Gospel loadout, sir?" "Yeah," Caldwell growled. "We're gonna preach a sermon. The Shrapnel Sermon." Down in the deepest, dirtiest cargo hold of the Rust Bucket, Chief O'Connell and his crew began loading the special ammunition into the massive mass-driver cannons. These weren't sleek missiles. They were enormous, ugly canisters made of cheap corrugated iron, welded together with no regard for aerodynamics. They were the size of school buses. Inside, they weren't packed with high explosives or antimatter cores. They were packed with junk. Literal industrial refuse. Millions of ball bearings, jagged pieces of shredded hull plating from scrapped ships, broken gears, lengths of rebar, and dense cubes of compacted trash. It was tons of useless, inert metal packed under immense pressure. Up in the Xyler fleet, Valerius saw the human ships change formation. The sleek missile destroyers fell back, and the heavy, ugly industrial haulers moved forward. "They are resorting to kinetic bombardment," Valerius noted with amusement. "Large, slow projectiles. They think that if the missile is bigger, the Argus cannot stop it. How primitive. Target the incoming rounds. Vaporize them." The human ships fired. The enormous canisters lumbered through the void, slow and ungainly. The Argus array tracked them easily. They were the easiest targets the AI had ever seen. Thousands of blue lasers swiveled, locking onto the fat metal cylinders. But just before the lasers fired, a timed charge inside each human canister detonated. The canisters didn't explode in a fireball. They simply opened. Like a deadly flower blooming in the dark, the canisters split apart, releasing their contents. The pressurized junk inside exploded outward in an expanding cone of hypervelocity debris. In an instant, 20 large, easy-to-track targets became 20 million tiny, chaotic ones. The Argus Array AI, which had flawlessly intercepted thousands of guided missiles, suddenly suffered a catastrophic logic failure. It was programmed to track threats. It categorized threats by heat, trajectory, and guidance systems. But this was just stuff. A cloud of jagged metal violently expanding across tons of cubic kilometers of space. There were no engines to track. No heat signatures to lock onto. Just millions of cold, dumb pieces of iron spinning wildly in the dark. Warning, target saturation. The Xyler bridge computer shrieked, its calm voice replaced by panic. Unable to prioritize. Too many vectors. The threat matrix it is everywhere. The Argus lasers began to fire wildly. They swung back and forth in a frenzy, vaporizing a piece of rebar here, melting a ball bearing there. But for every piece of junk they destroyed, 10,000 more sailed past them. You cannot shoot down a cloud with a sniper rifle. You cannot stop a sandstorm by catching individual grains of sand. Valerius watched in horror as the perfect defense collapsed into chaotic spasms. The blue lasers thrashed like dying snakes, overheating as they tried to do the impossible. Then the sermon hit the congregation. The shrapnel cloud struck the Xyler fleet at 20,000 kilometers per second. It wasn't a single devastating blow like a nuclear weapon. It was death by a billion cuts. The sleek, chrome hulls of the Xyler ships were stripped bare in seconds. Millions of pieces of jagged metal shredded sensors, tore through delicate heat radiators, and punctured the thin, elegant armor. The Argus laser emitters themselves were sandblasted into useless junk by the very debris they were trying to stop. Windows cracked and blew out, venting atmosphere and crew into the void. Engines, clogged with metal grit, choked and died. The beautiful Xyler fleet turned into a collection of drifting, sparking wrecks, shredded by the simplest weapon in the universe. Trash moving very fast. On the bridge of the Rust Bucket, Admiral Caldwell listened to the reports of the Xyler fleet breaking apart. He lit his cigar, the smoke curling up toward the ventilation ducts. "Precision is a crutch," Caldwell said to his stunned bridge crew. They spent so much time building a lock that could pick any key they forgot that sometimes, the enemy just kicks the damn door in. The Xyler retreated, leaving half their fleet behind as drifting scrap. They had learned a terrible lesson in human warfare. They learned that perfection is fragile. They learned that smart weapons can be fooled but dumb weapons cannot. The Galactic Council later analyzed the battle. They were horrified by the crudity of the human tactics. They called it barbaric, wasteful, and inelegant. Admiral Caldwell, when asked for a comment by the Galactic press, simply shrugged. "The gospel of momentum doesn't care about elegance," he said. "You can have the smartest computer in the galaxy, but if I throw enough junk at it, eventually something is going to get through." They wanted a war of perfect equations. We gave them chaos. And chaos always wins. Humanity had proven the ultimate physical HFY truth. Sometimes the answer isn't a smarter missile. Sometimes the answer is just a whole lot of garbage thrown really hard. We are the ones who don't mind getting our hands dirty. We are the ones who weaponize the scrap heap. And if you try to hide behind a perfect shield, we'll just turn the sky into a shotgun blast. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. Quantity has a quality all its own. If you enjoyed this overwhelming victory of dumb ammo over smart defense, hit that like button. Comment below. What's the most creative use of junk you've seen in a sci-fi battle? Subscribe for the next conquest of Saga X, the Recoil Prophet. The cloud has passed. The fleet is shredded.